Welcome again to the program. It's the first time in 100 years that the French capital Paris is hosting the Summer Olympic Games, with the majority of the events taking place in or around the city's most iconic areas. Games Wide Open is the motto for this year's Paris Olympics, which officially begins in a few hours with the opening ceremony. Today's ceremony will feature boats carrying athletes and dignitaries down 6 kilometers of the River Seine, with room for 300,000 spectators. Few details are known about the event, though there's speculation about Celine Dion and Lady Gaga performing, with the ceremony's artistic director Thomas Joly saying he wants to show France in all its diversity. The Paris Games is the first to achieve gender parity among athletes, with 5,250 male and 5,250 female athletes set to compete. However, a little setback for the country. A series of fires hit the French high-speed rail lines, disrupting travel and affecting some 800,000 customers. Rail company SNCF says it's a massive attack aimed at paralyzing the network, with France's transport minister condemning the coordinated malicious acts.
After years of preparation, the Paris 2024 Olympic Games is just hours away from beginning, with an unprecedented opening ceremony on the River Seine. Later, on a rainy morning, clouds drifted past the Eiffel Tower, with the scene set for the start of the Games. However, 3 high-speed train routes in France were vandalized overnight, which caused massive disruption to traffic on the day the Olympics officially gets underway. The state-owned railway operator says arsonists had targeted installations along the lines connecting Paris with cities such as Lille in the north, Bordeaux in the west, and Strasbourg in the east. Passengers in Paris are stranded at the Montparnasse and the Gare du Nord train stations as the vandals targeted France's high-speed TGV network with a series of coordinated actions, bringing major disruptions to some of the country's busiest rail lines. The attacks will make it tougher for people traveling to and from Paris. Many were preparing to go off on their summer holidays, and some had already been waiting several hours. Sydney Hein Papusik from Delft in the Netherlands says her train back home was delayed.
We came to here, and then we were waiting on our train, and we saw at the billboards that there is a delay on 13 minutes. Now it's 14 minutes, so it's getting longer and longer. I was in first a little bit scared to come here, but we already booked it, so we thought, yeah, if something happens, there are enough police people, so it will be okay, we thought. But yeah, it was a little bit scary, but nothing happened, so that's nice.
All travelers have been urged to postpone their journeys as repairs are underway, but traffic will be severely disrupted until at least the end of the weekend. This coordinated sabotage happens at the peculiar time France rolled out an unprecedented peacetime security operation involving tens of thousands of police and soldiers to lock down the capital for the Games, sucking in security resources from across the country.
Well, as concerns persist on the massive impact of the damaged rail lines, International Olympic Committee President Thomas Bach says he has full confidence in the authorities. Speaking ahead of the opening ceremony, he said he has no major concerns about the safety of the Games.
No, I don't have concern. We have full confidence in the French authorities. All the measures are being taken, and the French authorities are assisted by 180 other intelligence services around the world, and not only by information. Some of them are even deploying their human resources, and so we have good reasons to have full confidence.
Let's get more on this. Joining us is the VOA's correspondent in Paris, Lisa Bryant. Lisa, great to see you today.
Great to see you.
So what's the update at this time on the damaged rail lines and stranded travelers?
So what's the latest right now? Essentially, actually, there's some good news, which is Some of the lines, that is the Atlantic line that goes to Bordeaux and some of those areas near the Atlantic coast, that's slowly getting back to normal. When I say slowly, I mean slowly. They're beginning to repair. And then there's some eastern lines that have been, where service has been restored, but with delays. But as you had your footage there of the Gare du Nord with all those passengers going to the Netherlands and elsewhere, those are the Eurostar lines, and about a quarter of those trains have been canceled completely. So overall, about 800,000 people are expected to be affected over the weekend.
And this is being reported as a coordinated attack, and it's no coincidence. It happened on this big day for Paris, hours before that huge opening ceremony. The Olympic opening ceremony, what are authorities saying about those behind this vandalism?
Well, authorities still don't know who the perpetrators are. There have been some sort of glimpses of, of some people who seem to have been trying to stage attacks late night. The attacks took place probably overnight, Thursday into Friday, early Friday morning. There were apparently some railway workers who had been trying to repair some lines and overnight, and they did spot some people who left. And one set managed to actually chase them away. There were some vans with not explosive, but equipment that was linked to arson that were found. So that there have been individuals. Also, there has been a suspicion by authorities that this carries kind of the handprint or the footprint of far left groups. And there's been a similar sort of attack last year in Germany, which a far left network had actually claimed responsibility. It was on social media.
Right. Be that the case, France rolled out an unprecedented, security operation involving tens of thousands of police and soldiers to lock down the capital ahead of today's opening ceremony and, for the entire stretch of the games, as it were. How did this sabotage slip by the authorities?
Well, it's kind of, you have all these massive security detail. There's tens of thousands of troops, police, everybody's sort of honing in on Paris. But as the Prime Minister, the French Prime Minister said, Gabriel Attal, is, you just can't prepare for everything. You can plan ahead, but you have no idea when this is all going to strike. So, they're looking at drone attacks, cybersecurity attacks. But, this was happening across France. And I think a lot of the security was not completely, but there was a huge concentration on the Paris area. But, they just can do what they can do. And, the reaction has been fairly swift in terms of being able to at least start to do the repairs, but apparently very heavy reparations. So it's not going to happen like overnight.
Right. And aside from, those disrupting travel for those who want to see the opening games, people coming in last minute, have these attacks affected, the opening ceremony in any way?
Well, the opening ceremony per se, no, in the sense that, yes, there's going to be about four different train loads of athletes. One of them was delayed coming in, but generally what the Paris mayor says is that the games are going to come as normal, and that will not be affected. That said, when it comes to spectators coming in for today, or lots of French were leaving today on vacations, Parisians wanted to get out of town, that has been massively affected. People have been told, basically advised to stay at home until that they have, confirmation that their travel is definitely going to happen. So there is some major disruption, but, the games themselves, the opening ceremony is generally going to be being held as normal. That said, we've been getting some rain, and so that has been a worry, and that's been on the front page of made headlines in a lot of the local channels in the last few hours.
Right, and you hearing of any security beef up, being put in place in Paris because of the incident earlier?
Well, I'm sure that they're, maybe around the train stations, et cetera. But I think already in some ways with the security, you can't get more beefed up. I mean, people who wanted to go to the opening ceremonies were told to go way, way ahead of time. They're going to start at 7:30 p.m. local time. There are barriers everywhere. There are police everywhere. There are any place around the Seine you can only get in on normal times until the ceremony is over with a special QR code. So in some ways, you could say you can't get more beefed up. There are river police who have been, sort of scouting the area. They're apparently going to, clear the skies for a bit for, air traffic. So Paris is pretty beefed up. But again, I mean, what we saw with this sabotage is that, there's no 100% security, no 100% confidence.
And after 100 years, Paris, sure, is going to pull out all the stops to ensure that they have a fantastic opening ceremony. So what do we expect today? We've heard, I'm not sure if it's confirmation that Lady Gaga and Celine Dion might be performing. What do we expect?
That's what we're hearing. Yeah, there are a lot of surprises up the sleeves of organizers. We're probably going to see it tonight, either from the fan zones, which I'm probably going to go to, or in person. But they're not really revealing their cards until this evening. But we do know that there's going to be a lot of dignitaries, heads of state. We know that Snoop Dogg, he was carrying the Olympic flame earlier today. And theoretically, reportedly, Lady Gaga and Celine Dion, among other stars. So the rest, I think they want to keep as a surprise.
And how would you be enjoying the opening ceremony today?
I think I'll just go out to, there's a fan zone near my neighborhood, and I'm just going to see it from there with the rest of my neighbors, and hopefully not with an umbrella because it is supposed to rain.
Well, with the rest of us, we'll join you from our TVs, from wherever in the world we are. Thank you so much, Lisa, for your time and for giving us updates on that situation in Paris. Lisa Bryant.
Thank you.
Let's move on. Former U.S. President Barack Obama has endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris as the Democratic presidential nominee for the November election, ending days of speculation over whether or not he would support her. In a joint statement, Mr. Obama and his wife, Michelle, said they believe Ms. Harris has the vision, the character, and strength that this critical moment demands. Mr. Obama was reportedly among more than 100 prominent Democrats Ms. Harris spoke to after President Joe Biden announced last Sunday that he was dropping out of the race. In a statement at the time, Mr. Obama praised Mr. Biden's exit but stopped short of endorsing Ms. Harris. The U.S. Vice President has already secured the support of a majority of Democratic delegates, setting her on course to become the official nominee at the party's convention in August. And still on Vice President Harris, who has met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in her ceremonial office at the White House. She describes her meeting with the Israeli leader as frank and constructive and reaffirms her unwavering commitment to Israel's security. Ms. Harris also emphasized that she strongly urged Mr. Netanyahu to address the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, a discussion closely monitored for potential changes in U.S. policy towards Israel if she becomes president. Striking a tougher tone than President Joe Biden, Ms. Harris said she made it clear her serious concerns about casualties in Gaza, telling Mr. Netanyahu how Israel defended itself mattered.
So I just had a frank and constructive meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu. I told him that I will always ensure that Israel is able to defend itself, including from Iran and Iran-backed militias such as Hamas and Hezbollah. From when I was a young girl collecting funds to plant trees for Israel, to my time in the United States Senate and now at the White House, I have had an unwavering commitment to the existence of the State of Israel, to its security, and to the people of Israel. I've said it many times, but it bears repeating. Israel has a right to defend itself. I also expressed with the Prime Minister my serious concern about the scale of human suffering in Gaza, including the death of far too many innocent civilians. And I made clear my serious concern about the dire humanitarian situation there, with over 2 million people facing high levels of food insecurity, and 500,000 people facing catastrophic levels of acute food insecurity.
Elsewhere over in California, park fires burning fiercely northeast of Chico, creating a rare and dangerous phenomenon, a fire tornado. The fire, which started on Wednesday, has already consumed over 120,000 acres and is only 3% contained. Time-lapse video captured dramatic footage of the fire tornado, a swirling vortex of fire and ash fueled by the intense heat and high winds surrounding the blaze. This rare occurrence is formed when turbulent wind conditions combined with the heat of the fire, creating a rotating column of air and fire that can cause severe damage. Wildfires are also raging in Canada, with firefighters working to save as many buildings as possible in Jasper Town. The town is in the middle of Jasper National Park in the province of Alberta, which draws more than 2 million tourists a year, who were evacuated on Monday when officials estimated 15,000 visitors in the park. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith fought back tears while giving an update on a raging wildfire that devastated the Western Canadian tourist town. Authorities say most of the wildfire is still considered out of control. There are currently 176 wildfires burning in Alberta, more than 50 of which are out of control. Around 10 of those blazes are close to the border with British Columbia, where dozens of fires are also reported out of control.
In the last day or so, we have all seen on the news and social media the horrific pictures and videos coming out of Jasper. Homes and businesses have been lost to a wildfire that people are calling a wall of flames. There is no denying that this is the worst nightmare for any community. Right now, the wildfire is still out of control, and crews are working in dangerous conditions to try and protect critical infrastructure in the town. We're seeing potentially 30 to 50% structural damage. To give you some idea, I mean, you've seen the images as I have. We don't know particularly which structures have been damaged and which ones have been destroyed, but that's going to be a significant rebuild and significant displacement for a long period of time.
Apart from the situation in Jasper, the Municipal District of Bighorn issued an evacuation order for the area east of Highway 40 and west of Ghost Public Land Access Point. A reception center continues to be open to evacuees in Water Valley Community Hall. An evacuation alert is also in effect for residents of the surrounding area, meaning that they should be prepared to evacuate with little notice. The estimated number of evacuees province-wide remains at more than 17,500. This number is still limited to people who are displaced from their residence or who need supports. While there were an estimated 25,000 people in the Jasper National Park at the time of the evacuation order, the vast majority of these people were visitors with other places to return to.
Meanwhile, evacuees from raging wildfires in Jasper have fled to Calgary, but some were momentarily turned away due to staffing issues, and this frustrated the displaced persons seeking shelter. Calgary Mayor Jyoti Gondek later apologized for the initial assistance delays, empathizing with the evacuees' ordeal. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said on Thursday afternoon he had convened a meeting of the Incident Response Group to discuss the Alberta wildfires.
Kind of frustrated for sure by lack of communication, or the communication that we did get not being accurate. But I don't know, I'm just trying not to stress.
If I break down now, what will I do? I will just sit and cry and nothing's going to change, right?
To those evacuees who did not immediately receive assistance, I apologize sincerely. I can only imagine what it must have been like to have to rapidly evacuate and then drive 12 to 15 hours to show up here and be met with closed doors.
A Russian investigative committee has released video footage showing the man identified as Yevgeny Serebryakov being escorted for interrogation by masked security personnel. The man is suspected of involvement in the manufacturing and planting of a car bomb which injured 2 people, including an officer from Russia's military intelligence agency in northern Moscow. According to investigators, Serebryakov confessed that he acted on instructions of the Ukrainian security service. Turkish authorities say they had arrested a Russian citizen suspected of the attack in Bodrum after he had flown in from Moscow. On Friday, Russia's security service said in a statement that the man had been brought to Russia from Turkey and handed over to investigators. And to the war in Gaza, flares lit up the sky over Rafah with the sounds of gunfire and explosions echoing through the streets of the southern Gaza Strip. As Israel's military operations continued, Israeli forces advanced deeper into some towns on the eastern side of Khan Yunis in southern Gaza on Thursday, and tanks advanced in central Rafah with airstrikes and shelling, killing 30 Palestinians over the past day. Fighting in recent days had centered around 3 eastern towns where the army claims it had found the bodies of 5 Israelis who were killed in the Hamas October 7 attack on Israel and held in Gaza since then. One of the world's most powerful drug lords, Ismael El Mayo Zambada, leader of Mexico's Sinaloa cartel, has been arrested by U.S. federal agents in El Paso, Texas. The 76-year-old is the co-founder of the criminal organization with Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, who is currently jailed in the United States. The U.S. Justice Department arrested with Zambada alongside Guzman's son, Joaquin Guzman Lopez. In February, Mr. Zambada was charged by U.S. prosecutors with a conspiracy to make and distribute fentanyl, a drug more powerful than heroin that has been blamed for the U.S. opioid crisis. Details of the arrests of the 2 men remain unclear, but it appears they flew into the United States. Citing Mexican and U.S. officials, local media report that Mr. Zambada was tricked into boarding a plane believed to be flying south in Mexico, but instead flew north and landed in El Paso. This arrest follows months-long operations by Homeland Security Investigations and the FBI. Elsewhere, Spanish police say they have seized 4 metric tons of cocaine hidden in rice sacks in Barcelona, dismantling an organization that operated in Spain, Paraguay, and the United Kingdom. The drug smugglers processed the drugs into powder in Paraguay and then put them in plastic bags, which were hidden inside sacks of rice sewn by hand before shipping them to Europe. Police add that the containers arrived at Barcelona's port earlier this year, but the haul of cocaine was only discovered in July in Toledo, central Spain, when the smugglers moved the containers. Authorities in Paraguay seized 3 tons of cocaine, which were going to be shipped to Belgium in October 2023, while in March, British police seized 2 tons of cocaine in Southampton that was bound for the Spanish company under investigation, which is based in Toledo. Let's check in with the ASEAN summit taking place in Laos. The group of Southeast Asian countries held its post-ministerial conferences on Friday with Britain, Russia, and South Korea as part of the ASEAN foreign ministers' meetings. Among other things, they spoke about the progress they have made in their relations with the Southeast Asian grouping. The meetings in the Laotian capital seek to advance a stalled bid to resolve a crisis in Myanmar and cool tensions in the South China Sea. 2 summits to be attended by countries and entities such as the United States, Japan, and the European Union will be held on Saturday to address key global issues.
Since becoming a dialogue partner, the UK has consistently shown its commitment to ASEAN by implementing concrete and substantive programs. These initiatives delivered through the ASEAN-UK Plan of Action and the Flagship Development Programme directly supports ASEAN's effort to build a stronger community.
I'm delighted that Britain is now ASEAN's 11th dialogue partner, good progress has been made on over 80% of our plan of action commitments, and we're showing a genuine spirit of partnership together.
We appreciate Russia's support for ASEAN centrality and ASEAN-led mechanisms and its continued contribution to our efforts to promote and maintain peace, stability, and prosperity in the region.
In the meantime, Australia and Canada have also discussed the progress made in their relations with the Southeast Asian grouping, particularly in strategic partnership and economic opportunities. According to the foreign minister from both countries, it's important to maximize economic ties in ASEAN groupings.
ASEAN is committed to working closely with Australia to further strengthen ASEAN-Australia Comprehensive Strategic Partnership, and with that, we look forward to our fruitful and productive discussion today.
The Australian government recognises that Australia's prosperity, Australia's security, and our economic future is linked with yours. By 2040, Southeast Asia as a bloc is expected to be the fourth largest economy in the world. Australia's Southeast Asia Economic Strategy to 2040 provides a roadmap to increase our trade and investment with the region. We are seeking to ensure we are jointly positioned to maximise the potential of our economic ties from now until 2040 and beyond. Friends, we have much to talk about over the next 2 days. Sadly, as we meet, a catastrophic humanitarian situation unfolds in Gaza. The human suffering is unacceptable, and Australia believes Palestinian civilians cannot be made to pay the price of defeating Hamas. The ceasefire proposal must be agreed, including release of hostages, and we must move towards the only hope to end the cycle of violence with a two-state solution.
We're very interested in furthering the conversation about potential trade missions with other ASEAN countries as well. We have opened an agri-food office in Manila and an export development office in Jakarta and Seoul. We are part of the CPTPP, and we're making good progress on the free trade agreement with ASEAN, which we hope we can finalize next year, and also with Indonesia.
Elsewhere, at least one person has been killed and another seriously injured when a blaze at a firework factory in Bulgaria set off a series of dramatic explosions. According to local media, the blast began at around 6:30 p.m. in the town of Pelin near the capital Sofia, sending mushroom clouds high into the sky, some flecked with the reds and whites of exploding fireworks. According to preliminary data, there were 2 tons of TNT equivalent in one of the warehouses. Interior Minister Kalin Stoyanov said on Thursday evening that a 49-year-old man died of injuries sustained in the fire, while his 20-year-old daughter is in critical condition in hospital. 2 men, a 22-year-old son of the warehouse owner and a 60-year-old employee, are believed to have been in the warehouse and remain unaccounted for. In Germany, protests of climate activists have brought the country's main airport in Frankfurt to a standstill in the early hours of Thursday. Air traffic has since resumed, but questions linger about security of civil infrastructure there. Cologne-Bonn Airport temporarily stopped all flights due to disruption caused by a climate activist group. Police in the western city of Cologne said that the group, Last Generation, said in separate statements on the social media, ex-social media platform, that it was blocking air traffic at the airport, calling on German government to pursue a global agreement to exit oil, gas and coal by 2030. And joining us now is DW's Matters Richmond from Berlin for more on this. Hello, Matters. So help us understand. Help us understand further the reason for this airport protest. Why were the activists demonstrating in this way?
The group protesting at the airport is called Letzte Generation, which translates to last generation, referring to the fear of members of the group to be the last human generation before the Earth collapses into a climate breakdown. tactics of the group have reached the public here already about 3 years ago, when they first demanded to speak to the German Chancellor about climate change, forcing him to comply through a hunger strike. In recent years, activists belonging to the group repeatedly glued themselves to busy intersections or airport tarmacs to protest against emissions in the transport sector. Now, the activists demand German government to do more on exiting the use of fossil fuels, suggesting an internationally brokered accord to end oil, gas, and coal use by 2030. The German government technically also has laws that demand reaching tough climate targets by that year, but experts warned last month that the country is almost certain to miss those goals, for example, of cutting 65% of emissions.
And so the activists glued themselves to Frankfurt's airport's tarmac early on Thursday. What does it say about airport security if that could happen?
Well, so activists of the group already had disrupted traffic at Cologne-Bonn Airport and at London's Heathrow Airport on Wednesday. In Frankfurt, at least 200 of the 1,400 flights scheduled for the day were cancelled due to the protest, according to the operating company. Travelers were expecting to head into their summer holiday when they got caught up in the cancelled or delayed flights. To reach the Frankfurt tarmac, activists had cut holes into the 3 security fences and then, according to the activists themselves, had used bicycles and skateboards to reach the far ends of the runways to glue themselves there. Police were quick to detain the activists, but yeah, as you say, questions linger about whether this can be repeated. The Interior Minister Nancy Faeser said more security infrastructure needs to be put in place: higher fences, gates, cameras, and sensors. Unions representing law enforcement already signaled to be short-staffed to patrol all of the fencing around airports.
And with activists able to block air traffic, what's at stake in the wake of the protests?
Well, this has been going on for a couple of years. Activists belonging to the group have done all kinds of eye-catching forms of demonstrating, among them spraying paint on famous paintings or memorials. And they've already announced more protests in the coming weeks. Both airlines and economists are putting the price tag on the damage to businesses and government coffers as an effect of the protests in the millions. Politicians of governing parties have decried the protests and have put prison sentences on the table for disrupting air traffic. At the same time, expected economic losses and losses of life due to climate change will transform economies around the world and here in Germany. This year, the country's south was wrecked by heavy rainfalls that increase in severity due to a heating climate. The government estimates effects of such extreme weather events could cause damages in the range of 280 to 900 billion by 2050 in Germany alone.
Right, Mattis, thank you for your time. Over in Ethiopia, the death toll from landslides has risen to 257, and this is expected to almost double. This is the concern that the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs expressed on Thursday. Heavy rains triggered a landslide burying people in the Goffa zone of southern Ethiopia on Sunday night, and a second one on Monday engulfed those engaged in rescue efforts. An administrator for the Goffa zone, Dagwayi Ayele, says rescuers have recovered 226 bodies so far and are searching for 20 more. In South Africa, the government has appointed its first female Chief Justice. President Cyril Ramaphosa named Mandisa Maya, the current Deputy Chief Justice, as the country's new most senior judge. Her term is due to start on September 1, when she will replace the retiring Chief Judge Raymond Zondo as the head of the Apex Constitutional Court. 6-year-old Ms. Maya previously served as the judge president of the Supreme Court of Appeal, the second highest court in South Africa, before her promotion to the Constitutional Court. She was the first black woman to be appointed a judge of the Supreme Court of Appeal and the first woman to be appointed deputy president and then president of that court. Let's go to Kenya in East Africa, where more than 50 people have been killed since mid-June when protesters began taking to the streets to oppose tax increases proposed by President William Ruto. This figure, supplied by the government-funded Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, is what galvanized social justice activists Wanjiru to call for justice at a protest rally on Thursday. Ms. Wanjiru, a prominent social justice organizer emerging from Nairobi's impoverished Matari neighborhood, represents a new wave of youth-led activism challenging Kenya's political establishment. At the protest, she attended police-fired tear gas and live ammunition amid ongoing nationwide demonstrations against corruption and poor governance, with protesters calling for Mr. Ruto to step down.
The lines are drawn. We are clear. There's the enemies of the people who've united, and there's the people. And now it's a tug of war, and the people have never lost. Everyone is bringing their expertise because we really want this to work. Everyone is coming together to bring whatever it is they can contribute to the liberation struggle to take this country forward. The president is doing everything in his capability to take this country backwards. This is why we cannot afford to give him more time. He's not interested in fixing the country, in listening to our demands, in advancing our cause, in implementing the Constitution. He's playing outside the Constitution. If we saw the brutality, Kenya has become a police state, that police can even come to your residential areas with tear gas and guns and water cannons, that young people are abducted in their homes, that I have to keep looking over my shoulders just in case someone is coming to abduct me. What is this? We don't do that in this country. That's not Kenya for us. And Ruto will not make that Kenya a reality for us. It's important for me today to go to the protest in honor of all the young people who have lost their lives unnecessarily, demanding an end to corruption and good governance and a new country to be born. And we want to say that, honestly, it was not in vain. We will not allow that their death be in vain. We will not allow their opposition to dance on their graves. We will not allow our country to ever go back to the realities that you cannot go out to protest for fear that a bullet might take your life.
Several communities in western equatorial states, conflict-prone Tambura County, recently celebrated the handover of completed quick impact projects funded by the United Nations mission in South Sudan to local authorities. Among the UN-financed initiatives were 3 bridges in Yubu, Turbiwa, and Bundri, all of which were constructed to promote and facilitate the voluntary return and reintegration of internally displaced people and refugees. These new pieces of infrastructure are expected to connect people and improve access to health services, schools, and markets.
To help the community in general, in terms of agriculture, transporting their goods to the market, to ease the movement of people from the village to town, for security purpose, and also it is part of development.
This bridge will serve or support to facilitate protection of civilians, either side. It will help the government to deploy security organs to ensure that civilians are safe. The bridge will facilitate the access of humanitarian either side.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is calling on countries to address the urgency of the extreme heat epidemic fueled by climate change. He was speaking just days after the world registered its hottest day on record. According to him, climate change is making heat waves more frequent, more intense, and longer lasting across the world. Already this year, scorching conditions have killed 1,300 Hajj pilgrims, closed schools for about 80 million children in Africa and Asia, and led to a spike in hospitalizations and deaths in the Sahel. Every month since June 2023 has now ranked as the planet's warmest since records began in 1940, compared with the corresponding month in the previous years.
But the living is no longer easy. This has been a week of unprecedented heat. First, the European Union's Copernicus Climate Change Service declared Sunday, July 21st, as the hottest day on record. Then on Monday, July 22nd, the mercury climbed even higher. And now we have just received preliminary data indicating that Tuesday, July 23rd, was in the same range. In other words, this past Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday were the 3 hottest days on record. But let's face facts. Extreme temperatures are no longer a 1 day, 1 week, or 1 month phenomenon. If there is one thing that unites our divided world, is that we are all increasingly feeling the heat. Heat is estimated to kill almost 500,000 people a year, and that's about 30 times more than tropical cyclones. We know what it is driving it: fossil fuel charged, human-induced climate change. And we know it's going to get worse. Extreme heat is the new abnormal. But the good news is that there are solutions. The good news is that we can save lives and we can limit its impact.
On behalf of the United
And the teams representing Senior Model College, Mirror, and students of New Era Girls Secondary School, Surulere, both in Lagos State, have emerged winners of the World Robot Olympiad Finals for junior and secondary schools held here in Lagos. Aside from the trophies and other prizes won, the 2 schools will represent Nigeria at the World Robot Olympiad scheduled to hold in Turkey in November 2024. The State Commissioner for Basic and Secondary Education, Mr. Jamiu Ali Balogun, says the state government will continue to invest in education and the 21st century technology as enunciated in the Themes Plus agenda.
Creativity has obviously found its way into the classroom, with students developing technology devices that can make a task easier. The Lagos State government has constantly supported secondary schools in building their passion in the area of technology. And this time, the 2024 World Robot Olympiad competition, organized by the State Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education, has given the public and private students another opportunity to exhibit their learnings through practical demonstration, thereby increasing their curiosity for technology and robotics.
I believe that in nearest future, our next generation are prepared. They are not just prepared to provide solutions to our problems. They are prepared to take the lead, not just in Nigeria, not just in this continent, but across the world.
Lagos State Senior Model College, Mero, students of New Era Girls Junior Secondary School, Surulere, and 48 other schools represented in the competition showcased their robotic tasks.
So that's a very good one. And robot education is going far away. And so we expect that our children will not be left out.
Some of the students say they now have better knowledge of robotics.
This program today has taught me a lot, because life now is advancing and it's more about technology, AI especially. We've also learned how to program, because our robots can't just build, there's build and then we program. So the two is together.
We started by building a base that can cover more distances in less than 2 minutes. Then we went to the arm that can pick up the trees and water elements and the flowers and put them and create parks.
The State Commissioner for Basic and Secondary Education reiterates the significance of science education for school children at an early stage.
The world is all about STEM, it's about sciences, and the future is about ICT. I want you to focus more on your studies, to be the best, and to be an ambassador to your various schools, to your various community, to your family. The only thing we can give you is quality education. Education that is competitive in the global market. And we are trying our best. I want to assure you very soon, between September and first quarter next year, some of you are going to have computer devices in your school.
And the winners of the 2024 Robot Olympiad are Lagos State Senior Model College, Mero, and students of New Era Girls Junior Secondary School, Surulere, for their technology-driven creative work, which grants them an automatic ticket to represent Nigeria at the World Robot Olympiad scheduled in Turkey in November.
Well, here's another win, this time in the animal world. A chicken named Lacey from British Columbia is going viral on social media for her remarkable ability to identify 6 letters, numbers and colors in just 1 minute, earning her a spot in the Guinness World Records. The veterinarian Emily Carrington says she taught the chickens how to do the tricks, and over a period of time they accumulated more and more tricks they knew how to do. Footage show Lacey leaving her coop and hopping into a school bus-shaped trolley pulled by Carrington. She can also be seen in a garage correctly identifying numbers and earning her treats. Carrington, a vet with a passion for animal behavior and intelligence, says her role in this achievement is key, which aims to explore the limits of chicken intelligence and understanding.
This one is where they're supposed to
runs
peck
a
the
YouTube channel called
circle there
Thinking
with
Chicken, where she documents her chickens and highlights their cognitive abilities.
Good girl. Okay. And then I switch around. Okay, and go on this side. Okay, and go on this side. Good girl. I started training my chickens a couple of years ago with my second batch of chickens. This is the third batch. And I discovered with the second batch that they could learn, and then I carried on with the third batch, training them even more. My goal with training the chickens was to teach them how to do tricks so that I could examine what their thinking abilities were, what they were able to learn, and how their brains worked, basically, because I didn't see very much about it on the internet or even in the scientific literature. I developed the methods for training by trial and error. I couldn't find very much information on how to train chickens, not surprisingly. So I just used food, which was their obvious motivator. They really loved to get treats. And it was all trial and error. And I found that they learn and recall things in a certain way. They have a rather narrow way of learning and remembering things. So, for example, if I show them something up close, 2 things to make a choice, when they're up close, they seem to have a harder problem. They make mistakes, but if I allow them the width of the garage, to cross the garage about 4 or 5 feet, there's something about either the way their eyes work or the way their brain needs an extra time to process what they're seeing, because I found when I present them with the choices about 4 or 5 feet apart, they're much more accurate. And
The opening ceremony of the Paris Olympics will soon be underway, but if you are unable to travel to Paris to watch, perhaps you could join these Olympics-obsessed seniors in Los Angeles. They brought the Olympic spirit to Southern California this week by throwing their own mock Olympics and competing against other seniors from local retirement communities. For the games, some 60 seniors gathered to watch athletes in their 70s, 80s, and 90s compete in a relay race and in basketball, cornhole, and dancing competitions. Staged at Belmont Village, Senior Living Hollywood Hills, the mock Olympics have created a lot of excitement for residents. That's our program today. Thank you for watching. I'm Joke Rogers.